I'm here at Dinosaur University in Adelaide, and in Perth, on the other side of Australia, at another university, is my good friend, almost Dr. Kailah Thorn. I say almost doctor. Firstly, hello.
Hi.
So almost doctor because you're in that process where you've submitted your PhD, yes?
Yes, so it's been submitted, examined, accepted with minor revisions, and my computer is currently downloading it so that I can make tiny little changes and resubmit it again this afternoon, and then I'm done with the thesis and just have to graduate.
Which is fantastic, and congratulations on that. That's a fantastic achievement, and we'll talk some more about that in a minute. But what I want to do is just go back in time a little bit, not to the time that you studied in your PhD. We'll absolutely get back to that. But what I want to ask you is what, if you look back now and you look at wee Kailah, you know, at what age did you get a sense, or is it not until later that you got a sense that this is kind of where you wanted to be? Were you a dinosaur kid? Were you not a dinosaur kid? I mean, most kids are dinosaurs, but you know what I mean? Like the kids that are like, know all of the things and that ask me things, and I struggle to answer their questions sometimes because they know more than I do. So where were you at as a youngling?
I was kind of all over the place as a kid. I liked being outside, climbing a lot of trees, digging in the dirt, that kind of thing. So I was always very much about the outdoors. And I was always kind of had this really cool imagination, and I was quite creative as a kid. I don't know what happened since then, but yeah, I think my earliest
needs creativity. Don't doubt that for a moment.
I think my earliest memory that I have of being interested in dinosaurs, I might get in trouble for saying this because I'm not sure if anybody knows yet, but I used to get a rock and chip away at the old stone wall behind my grandmother's house, thinking that there might be dinosaurs in there, and because it was limestone and I could see.
Let's hope this interview doesn't go viral. Yeah, if this goes viral and the people at the back.
Yeah, look, she's sold the house since then, so someone else has it.
But the new people that bought the house bought it with those injuries. Let's just call them. No.
Yeah.
The new people bought the house with the science that had been conducted on that back wall. Because I mean, that's what you were doing, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, there weren't any dinosaurs in those rocks, which I would now recognise because it definitely wasn't the right age for dinosaurs, that stone. But yeah, so I think that was the first time I was properly interested in them. And then basically I didn't really think much about it for a while after that. I think just like a lot of kids, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew what I liked doing and what I was interested in. And I read a lot and really widely. So I kind of changed my mind 100 times between being, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 and digging that hole in a wall to high school, where I kind of decided somewhere around year 10 that I wanted to do something to do with dinosaurs, computers, and writing. And I honestly didn't think there was anything that would suit those 3 things in combination.
Turns out.
And here I am.
Years later, those things. Because you know, like modern technology is brought a new, not just the discoveries that are being made, and people all around the world discovering, you know, new dinosaur week and other prehistoric things, but the technology that's around now compared with you know, even 5-10 years ago is quite and we can go back to fossils that we've looked at and see them anew and see new things and learn new things and change our mind. So you're here now, so you're a museum curator.
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'm pretty excited. Yeah, so I'm the curator.
What does that mean? Yeah.
Well, I'm the curator of the Edward de Courcy Clarke Earth Science Museum. So this museum is purely contains rocks, minerals, fossils, and meteorites. And so it's all about the earth sciences, so everything from marine science to geology, and then also things like paleontology, obviously. But yeah, so my job involves looking after a rather large collection. So I have over 180,000 objects that are registered that I need to look after.
So what, 180,000? Which is because it's, I mean, we hear that number and it's huge, but it's actually not a big museum, is it? Like there are museums that have
not really.
But it's still a huge, because it's just you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just me.
And some volunteers as well?
I have yes, I have an excellent team of volunteers, and it's not really just me. I work with a whole suite of academic staff at the university, and there are other technical staff that I can rely on to give me a hand with things. And yeah, my volunteers are brilliant. I have 3 first-year uni students that have started volunteering this year, and I have a couple of other friends that have given me a hand occasionally. And also the Friends of the Museum, which is a big group of volunteers, and they've been helping out with things here way before my time. So they probably know more about this collection than I do.
So one of the career options of someone in paleontology is as a museum curator. I've spoken recently with Michelle Johnson, who is a paleontologist, and she's the curator at Dinosaurs Corner. So we've got a couple of curators out there. Frankly,
we do.
It should be all of them, but you know, one step at a time. Okay, so let's go back now. So you've submitted your PhD and you're doing your corrections and stuff. So what can you tell us about that? Because obviously until it's published, it's a bit kind of, there's things.
Yeah. So
what can you tell us?
For my PhD, I worked on fossil skinks. So lots of people are probably familiar with the little garden skinks you get in your backyard, but the group of animals that I worked on are the bigger ones. So blue-tongue lizards and all of their relatives, the little spiny-tailed ones, and the pink-tongue skinks, so they're like sort of long, slender blue tongues. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different lizards that are all within the Igurninae subfamily.
The Igurninae.
Yes, and they are the social skinks. Igurninae.
Woo,
yeah,
that's it.
So they are the social skinks. So they have lots of interesting behaviours that generally are, and generally more social than other lizards. So sometimes they live in family groups. So they'll all share a single rocky crevice with their offspring. Some of them are monogamous, so shingleback lizards, which some people might know as bobtails, sleepy lizards, pinecone lizards. They are monogamous, so 2 adults will keep finding each other every year in order to produce offspring. And so this whole group are united by these weird behaviours, but they're also united by some strange aspects of their skull bones. So I was working on the skull bones of these animals to see if we could identify them using just isolated elements, and then trying to find those exact same fossil, those same elements and bones in the fossil record to see where certain groups came up. So how did they get to Australia? When did they get to Australia? How big have they ever gotten? And when did we start seeing all these different species? You know, how long did it take for it to go from one type of lizard to 60 different types of lizard?
And I'm fascinated by the fact that you talk about them as the social lizards, but there's obviously, and that's not how you cladistically, I suppose, classify them. That's on the basis of the physiology. But are there things in the physiology that, I mean, what is it that led them to be these social beasts? Do we know that? Is that something for further research? Have I just given you your second PhD?
I mean, it could be. No, there are. So there's a group that actually, there's several different lab groups around Australia that are working on these groups of lizards and their behaviours. One of them is at Flinders University, who I got to work with on a couple of occasions. But there are others in Melbourne, and I think there's some in Sydney and Canberra. So basically, we don't know when these behaviours started happening, but they have a pretty good idea of why they give them an advantage. So why they're social. There's a good reason for them to use these behaviours, but we don't know when it first started happening. But there's other things, yeah, so there are elements of its physical biology that definitely link the group. These animals, these are the first skinks to reach Australia. So there are 3 different groups of skinks that live in Australia now, and this was the first one to get here. So Australia, you know, during the time of the dinosaurs and just after, didn't have any skinks. It had geckos, and it had some snakes, but other than that, the lizard fauna was really different. And so when this group first got to Australia, there was a whole lot of, you know, niche space that these lizards could occupy because there wasn't anything like them. Well, we don't have any fossils that show us that there was anything like them at the time.
Spoken like a true scientist, because we always have to temper our remarks, don't we, when we say, well, that's what we see from the fossil record. You know, yeah. Maybe in 10 years' time, another paleontologist comes along and finds something that challenges that or enhances it or confirms it or any of the above. But
yeah, I would love for them to do that. It would be really cool to find some older fossils in Australia. But for the moment, absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. So we can only, so at the moment, we can only say that we don't have a record of them being here.
Yeah, sweet. Okay, what I want to do now is, we've been doing these interviews because a certain hero of mine turned 221 fairly recently.
On Thursday?
Last Thursday, Mary Anning. And so I've had the extraordinary pleasure over the last couple of weeks of interviewing some amazing women in paleontology in Australia, and a couple from overseas as well that have spent some time here. What I want to ask you is, was she a character, a person that you knew of as you were growing up and learning science stuff?
No, I actually didn't know she existed really, probably until I got to Flinders. So I went through my entire undergraduate degree without knowing who Mary Anning was, really. I think, you know, everyone had heard about she sells seashells, but I nailed that too. But no one had really explained to me that there was this amazing female scientist. The name was familiar, so I think it had popped up, but she hadn't really been spoken of as a hero, or I hadn't really had the whole story explained to me ever, until a few people at Flinders mentioned who she was, and we had a few discussions about it. And then later on, I read a book about Mary Anning by Shelley Emling. And that was pretty much the story, like a biography of Mary Anning. And it was really quite full on. It was a very interesting story. She had a very interesting life, and is actually quite amazing. It's sort of intimidating to hear about how she could accomplish so much against all of the odds and all of these sort of the patriarchy at the time. And so whenever I feel that I'm held back in any way, I'm like, well, actually, not really. I could try a little harder.
Is it that thing of you're there and you're getting this roadblock and you're thinking, what would Mary do?
Yeah, definitely.
and it which is such a cool mark of respect for her, isn't it? But also to you in terms of being able to, even though you came to her story later, being able to understand and see the value of it.
Yeah, and I think not hearing about her until later just kind of made it more interesting for me, because I was kind of angry at the fact that I hadn't heard about her until that point. And so recently that's driven me to look into other female paleontologists. And I found one who's very interesting, who was actually based at UWA. So
Which is
there
University
was,
of Western Australia. Yeah.
yes, at the University of Western Australia, where I'm currently working. So the geology department here started when the university started, which is in early 1900s. And the first female lecturer for the geology department was a woman called Lucy Florence Victoria Hosking. And she's actually, hang on, let me just check my notes. So she actually started working at the school. So she completed her degree in 1925. So there wasn't a whole lot of female students around in 1925.
That's awesome. That's very cool.
It was pretty impressive. And she actually started, she lectured basically she was helping teach other students while she was still a student. And she was a lecturer at the university up until 1931. So she was helping with demonstrating and teaching classes while she was a student. And then after graduating, she became a lecturer and then started working with the teaching side and going on field trips with some of these students. And she was actually a paleontologist. So she was probably the first female lecturer in science at UWA, which makes her the first female lecturer in science in Western Australia, because the other universities didn't exist yet. So she was amazing.
Really cool story.
And yeah, she worked on fossils from Gogo Station. So if you've listened to Alice's talk, she might have brought up Gogo fish before.
We talked fish fingers a lot, actually. The thing.
Elpistostege.
Yes, that one. Yes.
But yeah, so Gogo fish is the fossil emblem of Western Australia, and Gogo Station is up in the Kimberley, so far up in the northwest. And the person who is credited with finding the first Gogo fish and properly writing them up is a German man called Kurt Teichert, who was also a UWA professor. But he actually gives a lot of credit for the paleontology record from that site to Lucy Florence Victoria Hosking, because she did the first fossils she properly looked at the first fossils from those sites. And she was the one who figured out that they were Devonian. So, yeah.
We're going to leave it there, because I think that is a fantastic point.
Although I did bring...
What have you got there?
So this is Spanodonta hoskingae, and this was named by Kathleen Prendergast, who was one of Lucy's students, and it was named after Lucy Hosking.
That is awesome.
So these are little lamp shells, little fossil invertebrates, which are pretty cool.
That is very cool. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your story and introducing us to this extraordinary Australian woman from the early 1900s. Because I think one of the things that learning about Mary can do for us is, as you've done, is to ask us to seek out more and to see, well, we know that history is written by, mostly people look like this a bit. But I love that it's like, no, let's hear what people that don't look like this have got to say. Let's hear the stories from paleontologists that don't look like this, because obviously the work they've done is extraordinary and just as worthy as those lookalikes. So thank you, Dr. Almost Kailah. When do we get to call you Dr. Thorn?
After I graduate, so pending whenever graduations happen again. So sometime
a strange time
after isolation. Yeah.
Sometime soon. I look forward to chatting to you again when you are officially Dr. Thorn. But thank you so much for sharing all of your things, and time for a cup of tea. Cheerio.
Yeah.